on-ramp, second on-ramp session. And in session two, I usually cover like some hinge movements. So that would include like rower, deadlift, kettlebell swings. And then if there's time, I go into strict press and a push press. And then workout will be generally 3 rounds of a 200-meter row to get some practice with that. Eight deadlifts, a core movement, could be a plank hold, could be sit-ups, tuck-ups, anything just to kind of give them a little break. And then 8 push press if I covered that here. If somebody needs more time on like the deadlift, don't rush into the overhead press. Save that for maybe a later session. Just some basics on the row here that I cover. Of course, help them get set up if they haven't used it before. And a simple thing that can make a difference for them is to show them how to get in and out of these boots. Sometimes they'll struggle with their feet, so just tell them to slide their foot up and then pop their heel out. I tell them not to make the strap super tight, keep them loose so they can get in and out fairly easily. And then I'll just kind of show them the basic push-pull first to get into a rhythm, get moving. So I'll let them go for about a minute, and then I'll kind of drill in some of the finer techniques. So I'll have them start, show them that we want to be leaning forward at the start of the pull and leaning backwards slightly at the end of the pull. Also drill in the sequence of legs first, hinge, and then the arms. Also reverse that for the slide forward. Arms, hinge, knees. It's probably the toughest point to get across and for them to practice smoothly is this of dropping the handle past their knees before they bend their knees. And I tell them that the purpose of that technique is to give our shoulders a break in that recovery stroke. Okay. A lot of times we'll see them bend their knees too soon, and then there's no relaxing in the upper body. So have them take time to practice that um, sequence of handle, hinge, slide, nice and slowly, so they can kind of separate that pattern in their head, and then they can kind of speed up as they go. All right, so that's kind of their warm up that I have them do. Next, we'll just start with the PVC pipes. Some good mornings again. They should be a little bit better with this by now. Second session and also after their first session, we practice these. So just some good mornings with the PVC pipe, practicing sending the hips back, keeping the knees up high or shins vertical and not bending at the knees too soon. We want to watch for that. Also keeping the shoulders pulled back. Then we'll kind of go into the basics of the deadlift. I'll show them kind of a couple full reps just to give them a visual for what we're working towards. And then we'll break it apart. We'll start with some top down deadlifts, keeping the pipe against their legs, sending their hips back, getting used to loading the hamstrings at the top of that lift. And then we'll work some knees to shins reps. And I get them to hold this bottom position for a little bit just to feel it. And what I show them is that we want the knees to stay between the forearms and not poking through. So we don't want to get into a super low squat with that. We also don't want them way up here since that's more RDL. So find that mid-range hinge. I also show them where we want the hip crease between knees and shoulders. Okay. And then we work that a few times. I'll show them that we want to see the hips and shoulders rising and lowering together in that bottom half. Then we'll just kind of put it together, get used to that sequence of a hinge with a knee bend, and then reverse all the way up, knees back, and hinge hips forward. And we'll We also want to make sure that they're keeping the bar close over their shoelaces, and I'll reference the bar path that we covered last time, that bar path, that 2 or 3 inch channel that stays over their shoelaces. We want to keep the bar inside that channel. Okay. Next, I'll bring them up to the rig. And this just gives them some feedback and a visual of the bar path, and it restricts the bar path because you're up against the post. So I'll have them get started by placing their shoelaces under the PVC pipe with the pipe down low so they can see where that should be. And then I will show them what we don't want. Okay, so what we don't want is bending the knees too soon and then the bar is getting stuck. Okay, also on the way up. Okay, knees are forward here. If I lift my shoulders, the bar gets stuck. Okay, and I show them what we do want. Keep the knees back, 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 and then slight bend in the knees. On the way up, pull the knees back, and then stand. And then once they're able to do that smoothly without getting stuck, then I have them step back and do a few without that restriction. Once they have the bar path down consistently and that sequence of hinge, knee bend, then I grab a barbell and I put some light plates on, usually like 15s. We want it to be enough to provide some feedback, but light enough that they can lift it, 5 to 10 reps without breaking a sweat. Also, we're starting from the bottom now, so I tell them we're starting from the bottom, so it's a little bit of a different approach setup versus from the top. So what I do is I have them get up nice and close, right? And I take them through my 4-step setup sequence. So I'll say up nice and close, feet centered is number 1. Number 2 is grip the bar. Number 3 is drop your hips. Number 4, squeeze your shoulders and lats, and then lift. And I'll have them run through those setup points maybe 2 times and just stand and relax without the bar so they get used to the time that it takes and also those steps in order. And then I'll have them lift 5 reps, touch and go, nice and light, maintaining tension. And I'll cue them through that. If the bar is getting away, then we want to cue them to engage their lats. I'll also, maybe before that set, I'll have them grab a pipe again, and I'll just show them like the difference between squeezing your scapulars and your lats and how to do that. So I'll give them several things to think about, and this is how I generally approach cueing for lat engagement. You can give several cues. Bend the bar around your body. It's one. Squeeze your armpits. Works as well. And or turn your elbow pits forward. Okay. And then I will feel for their lats being engaged. I will also let them know I'm going to pull on the pipe, and they should try to resist that and keep it close. Okay, so they're here, and I'm tugging on it, and they're trying to keep that bar close. I'll also explain that the goal is tight lats, not necessarily scraping your legs on the way up and down. So I'll show them that the bar can float, just off their body, but their lats should be tight. Okay, so learning to squeeze, engage your muscles independently of other feedback is important. Okay, so they can squeeze their lats even though the bar is not against their body. Okay, so just so that they're not thinking, oh, I need to scrape my legs. That's not the point. Okay. I'll have them go through a set, cue them through, maybe 2 sets to practice, maybe a third set just to kind of drill in an extra point. I'll watch for their knees to be twisting outward as they go through their set, to adjust. Give them one thing to focus on at a time. So first set might be the hinge knee bend sequence. Second set maybe tight lats. Third set maybe their knees pushing out. If there's time, I'll go over kettlebell swings. And probably the biggest thing that I see with kettlebell swings, well, 2 things. They're not aggressive with their hips, and also they bend their hips too soon. So those are 2 things that I watch for. Okay, so I'll tell them how to get started. Lots of people just kind of lift the kettlebell and start up here. I try to show them how I start by bracing, pulling it in, and snapping. Now, usually they kind of have this kind of soft punch. I tell them squeeze faster, squeeze harder to really drill it in on what it takes for a good swing. Okay. So quick snap also, I'll watch for them leaning back and try to correct that, have them come up to standing and stop instead of going too far back. If they're breaking at their hips too soon, the kettlebell will tend to pull them down farther. So we want to try to correct that. That's a tough one to correct because it's hard to feel, hard to see. So I don't spend a lot of time on that. The main thing is that they have a good snap and they're keeping their spine neutral. If you do touch on the point of breaking too soon, tell them to imagine like there's buttons on their hips and their wrists. When their wrists hit those buttons, that's what releases the hinge. Okay. And I'll show them a few reps of hinging too soon versus allowing the kettlebell to kind of push you back. Okay. Give them another chance, see if there's improvement. If not, don't spend too much time on there, move on. Strict press, push press, and this might be a part of your second session, or it might not. It might wait till the next session, but here's are some things I cover. Start with the PVC pipe. We want to educate them on the difference between a power stance, feet close together, versus squat stance. Anything overhead stance should be power and your feet together. So I show them how we set up. We want elbows slightly in front of the bar. And I just say, press overhead. Okay. Many times they'll take the bar or pipe around their face and they'll kind of end up out front. Okay. I'll kind of start at the top and I'll say, pull your head and chest through the window, and I'll kind of, use my hands and tactile feedback to pull their arms back. I'll say brace your core, squeeze your abs, or rotate your rib cage forward as they fight for that overhead. What we want is the weight to be stacked over their shoulders. Okay, so think shoulders straight up at the top. And then sometimes I'll place like a pipe right in front of their pipe. Now, if they don't move their head, they can't get it up. So this will help them pull their face back and then press. Okay. I tell them we want to see the bar or weight kind of in a reverse, traveling kind of a reverse trajectory to that overhead lockout. We don't want it to go forward and then back. We want it to go kind of backwards. Okay, so I slant my pipe like this and have them tuck their chin, push, and then pull through. Okay. And then I'll introduce the push press as a dip with the legs or knees and just stand up a few times. Okay, get used to that dip. Now here's where I will, most times I'll take them to a wall. This is good, really good way to kind of drill in the dip. So I have them slide their shoulders and butt down the wall a few inches. Okay, down the wall. And then I'll have them step out, do the same thing. Now here's where they will usually lean forward. Okay, that's not what we want with the push press. We want a vertical dip, not a hingy dip, because if we hinge and explode, the weight is more likely to go forward, holding us off balance instead of straight up, or again, that kind of reverse, slightly reverse trajectory. So what I'll do is, if they're hinging in the dip, I'll say tuck your hips, tuck your hips, tuck your hips, tuck your hips, there. And they'll be like, oh shit, feels like I'm leaning backwards. Okay, it's kind of what we want. Kind of what we want. It's leaning backwards, driving through our heels. You're not really leaning backwards, but it can feel that way. Okay, and then I'll watch for that as they go through some reps. If they're leaning, if they're coming forward again, I'll have them pause, tuck your hips, tuck your hips, tuck your hips under your shoulders there, and then keep going. Also timing, have them, just dip and stand quickly a few times without pressing to get used to that lower body explosion. And then I'll say, just let the momentum take the pipe overhead. Okay. So then they're less likely to press too early. Okay. If you just say, let the momentum take the pipe, then they're more likely to be patient with that press. Then I'll have them grab a dumbbell, do a few dumbbell push press each arm, watching for the bicep to stay close, and again that dumbbell to travel in that reverse trajectory. And then for the workout, then I'll be starting the workout, 200-meter row, 6-8 deadlifts, a core movement, sit-ups, and 8 push press. Typically dumbbell, maybe 2 dumbbells, lightweight. Okay, 2 dumbbells should be easy for them. Yeah, and again, it kind of is depending on like how much time is left. Do you include that core movement or not? 3 rounds, 2 rounds, maybe make an AMRAP in time remaining or something like that. Okay, so that's session 2. I will see you in next video.